Tuesday morning and welcome to Korea Today, brought to you live from Seoul.
Seoul announces that the Korea-U.S. joint military exercises are set to begin on the 24th of this month, emphasizing that the drills are annual exercises and should not be linked to the scheduled reunions for war-torn families.
Could the North Korean economy be leaning towards performance-based market principles? Details coming up in the headlines.
Seoul's population figures are falling while the number of housing transactions is on the rise. We'll have those stories for you on In Print.
And love is in the air for South Korean men and North Korean women. Find out why inter-Korean marriage is on the rise in the country.
The body of water between Korea and Japan will also be called the East Sea in the U.S. state of Virginia. The movement is now spreading to New York. We'll talk to one organization who is behind this. The outbreak of sudden fevers, body pain, and headaches, it may be the sign of the influenza virus that has proven to be more contagious this winter. We'll look at prevention methods on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And a good Tuesday morning. Thank you for joining us on Korea Today.
Good morning, everyone. There seems to be no end in sight for the snow that's been falling for the sixth day on the east coast of the Korean peninsula. The city of Gangneung has received the worst snow in 24 years.
The city is currently in a state of paralysis, so much snow blocking in everything, and of course, efforts are underway, personnel working around the clock. The city of Chuncheon is also lending a helping hand as well, sending 140 workers as well as dump trucks to help clear the roads.
That's right. Our reporter Chun Sung-cho is standing by in Gangneung in the pile of snow to give us a closer look. We'll get to her in a minute, but first, here are the headlines with Na Hyun-kyung.
Joint annual military drills between South Korea and the U.S. will take place starting February 24th. The dates were announced by Seoul's Defense Ministry on Monday. The ministry also said it has notified North Korea and explained once again that the military exercises are defensive in nature. North Korea, which strongly condemns and opposes the drills, has not reacted to the announcement yet. Observers worry this could jeopardize the two Koreas' agreement to hold reunions for families separated since the Korean War. The event is scheduled to take place at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea for 6 days starting February 20th. However, a day after the agreement was reached, Pyongyang threatened to scrap the reunions if the South goes ahead with the military exercises. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has, in essence, welcomed the concept of competition among workers, hinting at the possibility that the North Korean economy could be embracing performance-based market principles. In a letter sent to North Korean workers in the agriculture industry, Kim says equally dividing profits, regardless of one's performance, deals a blow to workers' morale.
Aside from the amount allocated by the state, the remaining grains produced at the cooperative farms should be divided based on each member's contribution to production.
Meanwhile, former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Donald Gregg arrived in Pyongyang on Monday. An official at the White House reportedly has made clear that Gregg's delegation is strictly private and does not speak on behalf of the U.S. government. Gregg's visit comes shortly after North Korea reversed its decision to allow U.S. Special Human Rights Envoy Robert King into the country to negotiate the release of Kenneth Bae, a Korean American who has been detained in the North for over a year. President Park Geun-hye has again expressed her determination to push for reforms in public institutes. At a meeting with senior presidential secretaries on Monday, the president pointed out that a number of public organizations, which are deep in debt, still offer their employees excessive benefits. She also expressed concerns about the recent opposition from unionists at some of the institutes.
그 변화의 길에 저항과 연대, 시위 등으로 개혁을 방해하는 행위에 대해서는 반드시 책임을 물어야 할 것입니다.
Citing recent data, President Park also pointed out that the debt owed by the 12 most heavily indebted state-run firms reaches more than 400 trillion won or 370 billion US dollars. She added if public entities resist reforms, every detail about how they are run will be disclosed to the public. Korea's exports of IT products, including semiconductors and mobile phones, inched up 0.2% in January compared to a year earlier, despite the weak Japanese yen and financial instability in emerging economies. The Trade Ministry says last month's IT exports amounted to 13.1 billion US dollars, citing growing shipments to the ASEAN region and the European Union as the driving force. Led by a more than 20% spike in smartphone exports, shipments of mobile phones surged over 14% from the previous year to $2.1 billion. Shipments of semiconductors also rose about 15% to more than $4.5 billion. Citing a moderate recovery outlook in Korea's major exporting markets such as the US and the EU, the Trade Ministry says it expects this upward trend to continue for a while.
And good morning, everyone. Time for a look through your newspaper headlines. We'll begin with a special series today over on 동아일보, which it treats as its top. The headline reads, 1 out of 6 local government heads end term prematurely, wasting 6 billion or 56 billion won, or about 52 million US dollars in tax money in the process. The story comes as the country nears 20 years since citizens first directly elected their regional leaders back in 1995, according to the paper, which it goes on to say that it analyzed figures from the first 5 elections and found that since the year 2002, when records began being kept, 56 billion won went into running by-elections to fill those empty leadership posts. Now, the most frequent reason for early termination was due to candidates being found in violation of election laws or corruption. Other reasons included elected leaders giving up their post to run in a parliamentary or gubernatorial race, and of course, death was among those as well. Scooting on over to Gangneung Shinmun, we'll go ahead and take a look at the front page image addressing a story you just heard in our headlines. The image title reads, Retired U.S. Ambassador Donald Gregg surprise North Korea visit. And you see him there on the left, arriving at an airport in Pyongyang, accompanied by a member of the U.S. Pacific Century Institute, of which he is the chairman. The corresponding Inside article does note that though there is anticipation that Gregg is there to win the release of American Kenneth Bae, it does speculate against that, given that Gregg is not believed to have had contact with members of the Barack Obama administration. Next up is 조선일보. We'll go ahead and take a look at some figures now. 조선일보's headline reads, after 25 years, Seoul population drops below 10 million. And a shrinking populace, of course, has been a problem that the national government has had its eyes on as well. Now, the included graph shows those falling figures for the city of Seoul, or rather the metropolitan area of the capital city, cited to the Ministry of Security and Public Administration. From the 10.75 million recorded back in 1994, Seoul's population as of December last year sits at 9.98 million, not including the 150,000 persons whose residence is unknown. Now, the figures are concerning too when it comes to regional growth, this subheadline says, in light of the fact that the portion of people in their 20s and 30s is still shrinking as those in their 60s grows. And on that note, let's go ahead and take a look at an article on Mailbusiness newspaper, or rather, we'll go, before we go to Mailbusiness, I jump-started a little bit there. We'll go ahead and take a look at that story on 중앙일보 there. And we'll go ahead and take a look at this story, and the headline reads, housing transactions revived, and in Seoul, sales quadrupled. Now, compared to figures from 1 year prior in January of 2013, and the subheadlines say that the sales figures from last month were similar to the transaction numbers in the years before the housing slump, that's 2006 through 2008, as it calls for the government to further deregulate. And on that note, note, let's go ahead and take a look at the front page story on Mail Business newspaper. We'll go ahead and take a look at that story there. The headline reads, auctions are also hot, and the subheadlines add that apartments in the Bubble 7 neighborhoods in Seoul and the greater metropolitan area are all seeing successful bids above the 80% mark. As you see there, Pyeongchon topping the list at 91%, and Seocho, Songpa, and Yongin all seeing rates above the 85% mark last month. The article adds, we haven't seen such numbers as this since February of 2011. And with that, we'll wrap your look at what's in print on this Tuesday. Next up are your closing numbers from Monday's market action.
A heavy snow warning is still in effect in the eastern Gangwon-do province. The snow must really be piling up there.
That's right. It is right around the Seoraksan mountain area and right east of the mountains. And we are joined by Chun Sung-cho, who is right now at the epicenter of this record snowfall. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm reporting live from Gangneung, Gangwon-do province, where heavy snowfall alerts have been issued for the past 6 days in a row. Now, the current temperature here in Gangneung right now is -3 degrees Celsius, while in Seoul it is -2 degrees Celsius. So in numbers, you don't see a big difference in those areas, but what makes those areas completely different is, of course, the snow. It is snowing still, as you can see, and I'm just surrounded by piles and piles of snow around me. I don't think I've ever seen this much of snow in my life, but in fact, there has never been a snow like this for the past 24 years. So to some of you, it may look like a perfect winter wonderland, but because the snow is piling over 1 meter here, but these record-setting conditions have been making lives of the Gangwon-do residents very, very difficult and inconvenient. So I will have more details on that later in the show. So it is mainly snowing along the eastern coast of the Korean peninsula, especially concentrating over regions like Gangwon-do province, some parts of Gyeongsang-Nambuk-do provinces, as well as Jeju's mountainous areas. They are expected to receive more snow up until today's afternoon, with some parts receiving additional 20 centimeters of snow. So for those of you in Seoul and other parts of Korea, all these conditions may look like a world away because most regions in Korea will receive relatively warmer weather conditions with afternoon highs well above 0 degrees Celsius. But don't get me wrong, it'll still be pretty chilly in the mornings and in the afternoons, so in the evenings as well. So please remember to bundle up from head to toe and take care of yourself. So right now, let's take a look at the temperatures across the peninsula for today. Seoul and Daegu's highs are at 4, Gangneung the coldest at 0, Gwangju and Jeju the warmest at 6, and Busan and Daejeon at 5 degrees. That's all I have for the weather forecast. I'll be back later in the show.
Last week, the U.S. state of Virginia's lower house passed a bill that requires all public school textbooks within the state to use the East Sea along with the Sea of Japan when referring to the body of water between Korea and Japan. The only step left is for it to be signed into law by the governor, in effect sealing the deal on the revision. Only 1 day after Virginia's state legislature finalized the passage of this bill, another East Sea bill was introduced in the state of New York.
Unfortunately, Korea was subjected to Japanese rule for many, many years, and that it's insensitive to refer to that body of water as the Sea of Japan. The Sea of Japan. It should be called, in addition to that, the East Sea.
It pushes for all textbooks in New York, starting July 1st, to also use both the East Sea and Sea of Japan. Korean American groups are also rallying behind this bill, voicing their support.
If the Korean American community in New York shows that this issue has a large impact on Korean Americans as a whole and promotes this sentiment, things can change in New York as well.
In addition, Assemblyman Gordon Johnson of the New Jersey legislature is also drawing up another East Sea bill. Along with strong support from the Korean American community, many are hoping these latest developments will create the impetus for change in other states in the U.S.
And just 3 hours ago, lawmakers in New York who've introduced this bill held a press conference, and many from the Korean American community were also there. We're now joined on the line by Mr. David Choru Lee, who is the president of the Korean American Public Affairs Committee, live from New York. Thank you for joining us this morning.
It is my pleasure. Good morning.
A day after the bill was passed in Virginia, a similar bill has been introduced in New York. How did this come about?
Actually, we were informed by the leadership of Virginia Korean American group every step and the strategy about the East Sea issue in the chambers in the Virginia Commonwealth, like upper body and lower body, by the Kakao Talk, which is a great invention by Korean people in Korea, with the group chatting. So it was not unknown about what's going on. And after passing the bill at Lower House, we contacted the New York State Chamber leadership about the possible initiation of the same bill at the State of New York Chamber, and they agreed to sponsor the bill. And we also contact about the East Sea issue a couple of years back, tried to make it law before, but it wasn't successful. During those kind of contact with assembly person and the senator, they are not unknown about how much important issue about East Sea in the Korean community. So that's why they're willing to support. And also we have a handful of senators and also assemblymen all the time get together as a friendship. So anytime we need the support from them, they're willing to support, such as comfort woman issue, immigration, and some other issues too.
Mr. Lee, Kim Young here, and this is exciting news. The passage in Virginia is considered a victory for the Korean American community. Now, what kind of campaigns as well as activities are there planned for New York?
Actually, the bills introduced and also passed in the chamber. So the good things, we choose very powerful senator and also assembly person that we are confident about it. And also we build up a coalition to support this issue, like all statewide. So we try to contact as many close assembly people and also senators to explain about this bill and also try to get support, which is very good function which we can influence about both chambers in the state of New York. And also we're going to explain now globalization and also Korea, Japan, and China is one of the very promising and also futuristic arena in the world, and also economy is growing up. So we should teach our own children about what's going on in the Asia. So that could be a very compelling story to the lawmakers, which they could be confident to support this issue, I believe.
Great efforts there, but you are expected to face a considerable amount of opposition from Japanese lawmakers in passing this bill. Along with this, what are some of the other challenges that you foresee?
I believe so. When we pushing the comfort woman resolution in state of New York, there are tons of complaints from Japan, also Japanese American community, I believe. And also we experienced a lot of anti-lobby from the Japanese ambassador to the United States and also Japanese government. So we would say that could be a big burden, and we're expecting even stronger anti-lobby action against the state of New York, because the symbolism of New York, which is New York has the capital of the world, which is UN headquarters state in city of New York. and the symbolism is so strong, and that's why they could be very, very powerful anti-lobby we are expecting. But we'll do our best, which we can coordinating with the leadership of New York State lawmakers, and also as the numbers of constituents of Korean community as their own political power, and so as the influence of the Korean community is growing up, they are very willing to help us out, and also we are very confident. We're expecting good results from the state of New York.
Okay, well, sounds good. Now, Mr. Lee, what are some of the other issues that your organization is trying to bring to the fore?
Actually, first time ever in state of New York, we opening monument about New York State Comfort Woman Resolution Monument. On that day, Senator Tony Avella and also Assemblyman Chuck Rabin, I asked to them, why don't you bring a law in state of New York teaching all students about the comfort woman? And today, we just got from the Senator Tony Avella's office, he announced that bill in state of New York. So that's going to be very big milestone, and this teach about a comfort woman issue as an Asian Holocaust in Asia, and also that is the worst crime against the humanity in human history, and also worst case of human trafficking. That's why if this bill passed in state of New York along with the East Sea issue, it's going to be a big milestone and talk to the world how much the Japanese imperial government did the wrongdoings in the history, and the history will not be forget about it, and also they should be complied their historical responsibility. So we are very happy he's announcing, and we are very confident this bill also go through in the Senate and hopefully in Assembly too.
Okay, some great work you're doing over there. We appreciate it, and thank you for talking to us this morning.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you.
And still ahead on Korea today, a smartphone battle is on the horizon following the decision from China's Lenovo to acquire Motorola Mobility. We look at the changes expected with this tectonic shift and how this may shake up the game for Korean handset makers. Don't go away.
And after day 3 for Team Korea, we now head into our Sochi Winter Olympic Games special. Still no medals right now. SJ Lee joins us.
Good morning, guys. Of course, we had
very bad news.
We talked about it yesterday. We were hoping for it. We had our fingers crossed.
You jinxed it, I must say.
I know. And apologies to all the fans out there and the athletes.
Another medal hopeful, Mo Tae-bum, turned up empty-handed also.
That's right. I mean, we went through the disappointment of Lee Sung-hoon over in the 5,000-meter speed skating men's event. And this time it was Mo Tae-bum. And we had kind of expected him to go into this event as one of the favorites to actually win a medal, but unfortunately for all the fans out there that were expecting a medal from Mo Tae-bum, unfortunately did not. Weren't able to get a medal in that event. Of course, despite a fairly good start, he did finish the first race with the final time of 34.84 seconds. The South Korean speed skater then finished the second race with the final time of 34.85 seconds for a combined 69.69 seconds to finish 4th overall. And while the Vancouver gold medalists did fail to stand on the podium this time, the Netherlands continued to dominate the sport, sweeping all 3 medals as Mitchell Mulder, Jan Smeekers, and Ronald Mulder took the podium in the event. Well, the quest for Korea's first medal never got close during the men's 1,500-meter short track event, as Lee Han-bin was the only Korean skater to qualify for the finals, and looked like the pressure was too much for the 25-year-old. And with Lee Han-bin never looking sharp in the final race, he would fall to 6th place in the final. But Russia's Victor An Hyun-soo did manage to finish with a bronze medal, claiming his first Olympic medal in 8 years. And while his 3rd place finish did give some joy to the Korean fans, it was Charles Hamlin of Canada who finished first, followed by China's Tin Yu Han. Well, some good news for all the fans here in the nation as the South Korean women's short track team dominated during the 500-meter and the 3,000-meter relay. Now, first off, all three Korean skaters, Shim Seok-hee, Kim Ah-rang, and Park Sung-hee advanced during the 500-meter heats, but it was during the women's 3,000-meter relay semis where Park Sung-hee, Shim Seok-hee, Kong Sang-jung, and Jo Hae-ri absolutely dominated as they're set to go after the gold medal on the 18th.
So the big question is, when will Team Korea see its first medal?
That is
That's
the
the
million-dollar
road to
question.
SJ jinxing another day of the Olympic
Don't say it,
Games.
because you're going to jinx it again.
If I don't jinx it, well, we are at our day 4, and I guess it's time that we finally see our medal. And I think later today there is a pretty good chance, of course, if I don't jinx it once again.
Knock on wood.
Exactly, that we will see our first medal later today. But before that, there's actually another competition you might be interested in, and that's, of course, the women's curling team as they're set to face off against Japan. Now, they're in their round-robin session 2. We are expecting them to possibly hope for a surprise finish that everyone expected here. But the biggest event, of course, will be Lee Sang-hwa. That's right. Going after her second straight gold medal in the event as she hopes to claim Korea's first, knock on wood, medal during the 500-meter women's speed skating event. All right, let's finish things off by taking a look at the medal count so far after 3 days of competition. Of course, taking a look here, taking out the standings here, Canada in first after earning a late gold medal at the freestyle skiing event for a total of 3 gold, 3 silver, and 1 bronze. Netherlands in second with 3 gold medals as well, with Norway dropping down to third. Meanwhile, Russia now in 6th place with 6 medals so far.
Some shifts in the order there.
That's right, and hopefully after today, we might be able to see Korea in the standings as
We'd
well.
like to see Korea.
Get on that page, right? Just get on the page.
That's right. Well, of course, before I do say goodbye to everyone here, let's take a look at the other events to look forward to later today.
The number of North Korean defectors crossing the border has dropped significantly due to the crackdown of the new regime, but there has been a steady flow of North Koreans coming to South Korea in search of a new chance at a better life.
And this steady flow has resulted in a steady amount of North Korean refugees here in Korea who are getting married to South Korean men. Kim Chan-ju joins us to talk more about this.
Good morning. With the increase of inter-Korean marriages between South Korean men and North Korean women, some say that this could help fostering better relations between South Koreans and those who defected from the North. So I went out to take a closer look. North Koreans escaped their country to defect to South Korea in search of freedom and to improve their economic conditions. The number of North Korean defectors coming to the South has been on a steady rise. Over 1,500 North Korean defectors made their way to the South last year, and currently more than 26,000 reside in South Korea. The population of female North Korean defectors have showed steady increase since 2002. And last year, 76% of majority in North Korean defectors were women. With that, marriages between South Korean men and North Korean women are also on the rise. Inter-Korean marriage agencies that started expanding its numbers from 2000s are targeting niche market. This dating agency specifically matches up South Korean men with North Korean women. Established in 2006, the agency now has 200 South Korean men and 800 North Korean women as members, while approximately 450 couples successfully tied a knot. The head of the agency, Hong Seung-woo, is also married to a North Korean Chu Jung-ok, whom he met through his friends 3 years ago. They have been running the agency together for the past 2 years and living a happy life.
My husband gave me a lot of support in settling down. When I was alone, it was difficult to ask for help. Adjusting to a new society and living alone is not easy. I don't have any special skills and didn't receive a lot of education in North Korea. That's why my husband's support is important in helping me adapt to South Korean society.
There are now some 20 matchmaking agencies for North Korean women and South Korean men nationwide. But some have criticized these companies for exploiting North Korean women in the name of profit.
I'm not extremely ambitious about my business, but just want to help these women settle down here. About 70% of North Korean defectors come to the South alone. I hope that these people all meet their partners and live happily in South Korea.
I met with a consultant for North Korean defectors to ask why North Korean women choose South Korean men as their spouses.
North Korean female defectors can find financial stability, learn the culture in the South, and adapt more quickly to society by marrying South Korean men rather than living alone.
A recent poll conducted by a dating agency in Korea asked South Korean men about having a North Korean woman as their spouse. 69% of those surveyed showed a positive response.
Average South Korean men who run their own businesses or have office jobs sign up for our service. The male members we have think highly of North Korean women's strong willpower to maintain their livelihood.
Having the financial means to is one of the important factors in getting married in South Korea, since North Korean women in their 20s and 30s have the strong willpower to maintain their livelihoods. South Korean men are drawn to this. According to research on North Korean defectors in 2012, there are 892 couples consisted of a South Korean man and North Korean women. Lee Dong-yeol also married a North Korean woman in the South last year after dating her for 2 years.
Since I was getting remarried, it was difficult to meet the standards that South Korean women have. My wife is very positive and is great to my parents, so I love that about her.
An increasing number of Korean men, including Lee, have been leading a happy life with their North Korean spouses. What significance does this have for future reunification between the two Koreas?
Inter-Korean marriage between North Korean female defectors and South Korean men can well increase in the future. It is meaningful in that these couples can help ease conflicting interests between the two countries when it comes to preparing for reunification.
Inter-Korean marriages are still in the early stages. As more North Korean defectors come to the South to settle down, this number is expected to grow.
So you say the number of inter-Korean couples will be on the rise, but wouldn't it be difficult for the couples to understand each other? Maybe because they come from a very different background and culture in a way.
Different,
That's
it's
right.
an understatement. Very
Considerably
so
different,
right?
That's right. There has been not an official data of troubles that they're having after the marriage because it's still a very new trend. But many of people that I spoke to said that there should be some governmental programs or organizations that could provide some practical information for those who defected from the North to settle down better. And then, of course, couples counseling at the same time. But as you said, not every marriage is rosy, and the couples that I met said that they have their share of trouble communicating with each other. For example, because of different style of language they speak, but they're now living happily. And North Korean women who defected to the South that I met said that their marriage has been quite easy compared to the harsh environment they went through back in the North.
All right, well, Korean men who have found difficulty in finding the right partner to marry have turned to international marriages, but with international marriages comes the factor of the language barrier and the cultural barrier. Now, are there more South Korean men who are embracing the thought of marrying a North Korean woman?
That's right. The number of South Korean men who are seeking North Korean women as their spouses, it is increasing. And according to one research run by the dating agency in Korea, they said that 69% of those who surveyed said that they have very positive aspect about the inter-Korean marriage. And of course, they seek North Korean spouses because they have common in culture and customs. So this could be a good alternative for those who are looking for their spouses, I think. And, I think I might add that happily married South and North Korean couples set a good example to break the barriers between the two sides. And of course, this could lead to, these couples could help, guiding better social integration after the reunification as well.
That is a grand idea there. Thank you. It's definitely a different trend that's emerging, worth keeping an eye on.
That's
Thank
right.
you,
That's
Chanju.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, still ahead, we're going to take a look at fevers and the common flu, which has been around these days. And there's a lot of patients that are visiting the hospital with body pains and headaches. They're classic symptoms of the influenza. This year, it's said to target the younger age groups. We look at what traits this winter flu carries and how to prevent it.
Let's now go back to our Sung-cho, who is standing by in Gangneung.
All right, we'll see the conditions there and what she has for us. Sung-cho?
I'm reporting live from Gangneung, Gangwon-do province, where it has hit by heavy snowfall reaching over 1 meter for the past 6 days. And this has paralyzed partially the streets of the downtown areas. And take a look at these piles of snow. They are as tall as my height and about 160 centimeters tall. And can you imagine these piles of snow are placed actually right on the pavement? So this is causing a lot of pedestrians to walk in the streets, making it a very dangerous situation for both the pedestrians and the car drivers. And both the cameraman and I'm having trouble walking on these roads because they're so slippery. These icy road conditions have brought the traffic to a near standstill, causing a lot of people to abandon their cars. This pile of snow is actually car, just covered with a whole bunch of snow. And obviously, I don't know when the car driver is gonna come back to this spot to pick the car. And about 30 metro bus lines are running on short routes, and 6 cities, including Gangneung, Donghae, Samcheok, and some small villages have been completely cut off. In the eastern region of Gangwon-do province, 167 schools out of 207 are said to have been temporarily closed, and some schools had to even delay holding graduation ceremonies and starting the school year. Now, because of the heavy snow, oh my God, I'm walking on this bunch of pile of snow. Okay, so because of such heavy snowfall, you also have to be very careful and watch out for those roofs of greenhouses and buildings caving in. Because the snow that we're receiving right now, they're said to be wet snow, meaning they're denser and 2 to 3 times heavier than the regular snow. And so it is not only dangerous, but also very difficult for people to clean it up as well. I've talked to some of the residents here in the Gangneung city, and they're saying that the cleanup process seems to be endless. And so it is expected that Gangwon-do province and some parts of Gyeongsang, Nangbuk-do provinces and Jeju's mountainous areas will continue to receive snow up until today's afternoon. So please be cautious on the roads when you're heading outside if you're in those regions. This has been Chun Sung-cho, Korea Today. Whew. Oh my goodness. Ah!
China's multinational tech company Lenovo Group recently announced it agreed to buy Google's Motorola Mobility handset division. Google bought the Motorola business in 2011, drawing a lot of attention, but it decided to sell it off only 2 years later. And Lenovo, which had its eyes on the operation since it went over to Google, is set to take over. With this acquisition, Lenovo will become the 3rd largest smartphone producer in the world, signaling a rapid change in the industry.
We will boost the profitability of Motorola and take on the challenge with those in the first and second place in the smartphone market, Samsung and Apple.
A lot of attention is on Samsung Electronics, which currently holds first place, to see whether it will be able to maintain its market dominance in the face of anticipated competition with Apple and Lenovo. Smartphone producers from Korea, US, and China are expected to engage in a fierce battle to win over global dominance. What changes this Lenovo deal brings about and how Korean smartphone producers respond to these changes will be at the center of attention.
So to tell us more about this acquisition and what kind of effects it'll have on the global smartphone market, Director Chung Ji-hoon from the Institute of IT Convergence at Myeongji Hospital and also advisor to Samsung Electronics joins us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Professor. So what was the driving force behind Google selling off Motorola's handset division to Lenovo? I mean, it's only been 2 years since
Yes.
Google acquired the division.
Actually, I think the original acquisition of the acquisition of the Motorola by Google was an old decision because it means that they are partner companies. They already have a partner company, but they acquire their competitors. So I think that the original intention of the Google was that retain and acquire their IP patent from Motorola, but Motorola doesn't want to sell off just patent originally. So I think that was the start point, and because now they can share the IP patent with the Lenovo, so I think that they sell up the other divisions to protect their market share, the profits in the market. And also one thing I want to consider is that when they have a decision to sold out Lenovo, the Motorola handset division to Lenovo, Google bought almost a 6% stake of Lenovo.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that means that it will be very helpful to adopt a formal Android operating system in China, and also that will be also helpful to launch a Google Play marketplace in China, because most of the Chinese business partners, the handset manufacturers, just using Android-based operating system, not formal one, and their own Play market. So I think that is another reason.
So it's a strategic decision
Yes,
on their
right. I
part.
think so.
And there have been reports that this will deal a blow to Samsung and LG Electronics. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that because the Motorola's brand is not that big enough, recently, and their recent like the selling record is not that impressive. So I think that will not shake the market overall. But LG Electronics, the market position is already number 5th in North America and South America in low-end smartphone handsets, and also in China. Actually, in 2013, the Samsung Electronics is number 1, and Lenovo is number 2. I think so that will be very helpful to boost up Lenovo's market share in Chinese market.
Okay, so they have a little bit of ammunition, Lenovo, right? But at the same time, we did mention that Motorola's presence has been dwindling in the world smartphone market. So they get this merger and acquisition goes on. What are some of the reasons that South Korean phone makers as well as US manufacturers should be worried about?
Because most of the Asian company M&A history said that is not easy, because of the cultural differences and because of cultural differences and the market characteristics different. But the Lenovo, already have a success cases in acquiring IBM's ThinkPad division in PC market. Using IBM's ThinkPad brand, they led to the number 1 position at the PC market. And start from PC market. They recently acquired IBM's x86 division in server computer market, and now they acquired Motorola from smartphones to tablets. It means that they can become a global brand for
all the lineup in IT hardware.
And
so
they
that
also
is
have the track
risky.
record.
Yes, right.
And it's worth noting that, though, that Google retains most of patents of Motorola. So what's in it for Lenovo, I must say?
I think that's very similar, answers because Lenovo's, intention is to become their brand into the integrated IT hardware market leader, not only just for the PC market, but also the smartphones and tablets and everything. So Lenovo will be number one in, hardwares in all global markets. So that will be the most, very impressive intention.
Okay, so now Samsung and Apple has been pretty dominant in the smartphone market as of late. Now with the introduction of Lenovo, who now have the track record and also the technological, as well as the buyout power. I mean, so what kind of changes are we expecting in the smartphone market in the future?
Actually, that is very difficult questions. Apple will be stay in the premium market position. And I think that will be enough for their profits, and I think that is very good. I think that Apple doesn't have any problem. Recently, they've got many profits from the content marketplace too. And Samsung Electronics have a little bit different because they up to now they were very famous for world fastest follower. But nowadays they transform into the first mover. So I think that they may try to change their market images. And for the Chinese manufacturers, I think Samsung. I think that they will follow the Samsung's way. I mean, it's already the Chinese manufacturers' handset has quite good quality nowadays. I think if they can get some brand and strategies, and then they will very big competitors with Apple and Samsung Electronics.
A lot of changes to be expected in the smartphone industry. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
A lot of people suffering from the flu these days. You've just recovered from the flu yourself, and especially after the Lunar New Year holiday and with the new academic year just around the corner, there are concerns that this may be getting out of hand a little bit. And Dr. Alice Hyung-kyung-dan joins us for more on this story. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So yes, seasonal influenza has swept across Korea, especially in the last 4 weeks. The Korean CDC has issued an alert because it has reached epidemic proportions and recommends that all small children, elderly, chronically ill, and pregnant women do get vaccinated. We are concerned because, as you said, school is right around the corner in terms of starting, and it may spread even more. So this is a very timely topic to talk about today.
All right, we'll look at some of the traits of the influenza. For you parents out there, if you have young children, you might want to take a look at this and pay attention.
The number of flu patients seeking medical assistance has been on the rise following the Lunar New Year holiday. According to reports, the number of outpatients suspected of having influenza, 48 out of 1,000, has jumped by more than fourfold compared to the numbers released on January 2nd. The influenza B virus was more commonly found until the end of last year, but recently the H1N1 influenza A virus, which comes with high fevers, pains, and aches, has rapidly increased. The flu this year comes with different characteristics from previous influenza outbreaks. First is the return of the swine flu. The H1N1 influenza A virus was considered a new kind of flu in 2009 when it spread rapidly. And currently, 40% of flu patients in Korea are known to have the H1N1 flu. The influenza viruses that affect people are the A and B virus. Influenza B comes with mild symptoms, but the A virus brings more severe conditions and is highly contagious.
Mutation in the influenza B virus happens relatively slowly, so there are many people with antibodies. That's why the symptoms are not that severe. But compared to that, the influenza A virus mutates rapidly, so there aren't many with antibodies. This is why the symptoms are severe and why the flu spreads quickly.
Second, the elderly population has shown greater resistance to this flu. Despite the conventional belief that children and the elderly are more vulnerable to the influenza, recent patient data shows that those in the 19 to 49-year-old age group have contracted the virus more than those in the older age groups. This is because those over the age of 65 have likely been exposed to the Spanish flu when they were young and have more tolerance to the influenza this winter. The Spanish flu is an H1N1 virus that was mutated from the avian influenza, while this year's H1N1 is a mutation of the swine flu virus. The inner structure of the virus may be different, but because the overall structure is similar, if you have resistance against the Spanish flu, you can fight off this year's influenza virus as well.
The most important thing is to get vaccinated before the flu season comes around. But in the case of the elderly or children, the antibody formation rate is only 50%, so it's important to try to boost your immune system when you can.
The flu is different from a common cold, so it's important to differentiate the two. You can test for the flu with a kit by using a cotton swab to collect a mucus sample from your nose. A red line indicates you test positive for the influenza. If you have the flu, you should take Tamiflu within 48 hours to reduce the symptoms and effects of the influenza virus. Also, washing your hands often, wearing a facial mask when heading out, and looking out for personal hygiene all help in protecting yourself from the flu. The influenza, if severe, can lead to complications such as pneumonia, so it is important to take prevention measures and exercise caution.
Okay, well, why are we seeing the return of the H1N1, which was actually prevalent in 2009?
Right, so in 2009, the H1N1 virus was a completely new strain, and it caused a pandemic or a global epidemic as it spread across the world because no one had seen this strain before. Nobody was immune. But now it is considered a seasonal influenza. In other words, it's just in the community and it's circulating, just simply circulating, but in much smaller circles.
So it never went and never returned. It was just always there.
Exactly.
I remember the schools were closed back then. It was a huge scare there. Now, how do you tell the difference between the flu and the common cold? Maybe it's just me. Right. But it's important to differentiate the two.
Right. So generally for the flu, symptoms are much more severe and sudden compared to the common cold. And so I had a patient last week whom I diagnosed with influenza. She told me that it felt like she was hit by a truck. Basically, it just came on really sudden and it was very severe. The fatigue of the flu can be very severe and it can last for greater than 1 week, whereas with a cold, generally after 1 week, you're starting to feel better. It is important to differentiate between the two because with a common cold, it's self-limited. You don't necessarily need to treat other than the symptoms. But with influenza, there is a treatment in the form of Tamiflu or other antiviral medications that are effective and you should take.
You know, I went to see my doctor in December and I got my flu shot back then. And even then, my doctor told me that it was too late. She was asking, why did it come so late? Because everybody else got it in October. Is it too late to get it now?
That's a really great question. I'm glad that you're asking. It is not too late to get your flu shot. The simple, most effective way to prevent influenza is through vaccination. And so by all means, people should get their flu shot if they haven't gotten it back back in the fall. About 70 to 90% of healthy people will develop immunity, so it's effective, quite effective, whereas the percentages are a little bit lower in people who are elderly or chronically ill, but still, everyone should get their flu shot, and it is not too late.
All right, better late than never.
Everyone,
Did you hear her? Everyone.
I had mine a
yet
little
to get
while
mine.
back. Right? Okay, so if you don't get vaccinated, you said that is the most effective way to prevent, right? What other ways are there that you can prevent the flu?
Well, preventing the flu, basically you want to have a healthy immune system. So getting enough sleep, proper nutrition, stress management, they're all important. If you smoke, you should stop smoking. Also, making sure that you're getting enough zinc or vitamin C in your diet, also important. There was an interesting study recently published that showed that colostrum, which is the first milk that is produced when a person is lactating or cows are lactating, was helpful in preventing influenza in mice. And so this might be something,
so breastfeeding is important as well, I
interesting,
suppose.
yes.
Thank you, doctor, for your time this morning. I'm
You're
going to
welcome.
go get that shot.
In a hurry?
Right. All right, that just about does it for this edition of Korea Today.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.